Don't forget, if you'd like to receive ad-free versions of The Evolution of Horror, sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/evolution of horror. Ever since Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, often called the modern Prometheus, the majority of man-made monster stories have in some way been a spin on the Prometheus myth. A character defies God and nature by seeking power, knowledge, creating life, and ultimately being punished. In 2012, director Ridley Scott returned to his alien universe to tell a Promethean story. By exploring the origins of the infamous space jockey in his original 1979 horror classic, Ridley Scott created a new sci-fi saga told across two movies that explored creation, gods, science, artificial intelligence, and what it means to be human. Join me as we continue exploring the evolution of man-made monsters, and we discuss Ridley Scott's divisive alien prequels, Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
Watch me. I'll do the fingering.
Welcome back to the Evolution of Horror. My name is Mike Muncer, and as ever, I am your host. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre, one subgenre at a time. We are currently in the middle of our 11th season, exploring the evolution of man-made monsters, and this is part 31. In this week's episode, as that intro suggested, we've got a controversial Ridley Scott double bill. Some people love these movies, some people absolutely hate them. Prometheus from 2012 and Alien Covenant from 2017. Both of these discussions will, of course, be spoilerific. Give both of these films a watch before you listen to our conversation. So, joining me to discuss these two weird and wonderful movies, I've got a returning guest. He was here last series to discuss The Host and Troll Hunter with me. A big welcome back to James Rendell. Hello, James.
Hi, mate. You all right?
I'm really good, thank you. I'm excited to discuss these very silly but quite fascinating films, you know?
Big, bombastic, fun, thinky
and also really dumb at the same time. It's an interesting combination. Let me start off by asking you, James, about this subgenre, because of course these two films very much harken back to the Frankenstein myth, the Promethean myth. There is something kind of classic, I think, about these two stories Ridley Scott is about to tell. So what are your thoughts generally on this whole subgenre of kind of, you know, Frankenstein-like kind of stories?
I mean, it kind of summed up what we just said there, isn't it? It does sort of on the kind of spectrum go from the very kind of profound and existential through to, you know, the sublime and the ridiculous.
Yes.
And in some ways is kind of ageless, as these films kind of talk to, but also of the moment. And sometimes, you know, I think you've talked about it quite a lot, often quite ahead of the curve. You know, the way that, you know, society's developed, for better or for worse, has often seemed to followed a lot of things that sci-fi and man-made horror have been talking about from its inception.
Completely, yeah. And everything seems to link back to Frankenstein, right? What are your thoughts on Mary Shelley's kind of original text and its enduring legacy and inspiration on kind of everything that's happened since, really?
I think, I mean, I haven't read it since school, but it's that, what can we do with the knowledge that we have, and I guess the fear of the unknown as well, isn't it? It's both a kind of looking backwards and looking forward. We want to know where we came from, and the creation of man, and then where can science take us? And that's always a double-edged sword. And I think, you know, tackling things like death and life, you know, it's the other side of the coin, isn't it? Because with progress seems to come this kind of monstrous aspect.
Totally. Every time we create something, we learn how to sort of destroy ourselves with it. Essentially,
yeah, very much so.
It's the recurring theme.
Or to make it, but then to control it. In many cases, commodify it or weaponize it. So I think that kind of Frankensteinian creation, and that's, you know, things of bringing things together and the agency they're afforded or not is always a pertinent story, because we have to destroy the things that we create and vice versa.
What did you at the moment we're recording this? We've just had the Oscars. Frankenstein won a bunch. Did you enjoy Del Toro's Frankenstein? What did you think of it? I
have still not watched it. I'm really behind the curve. Yeah, so I mean, I love Del Toro, so but you know, it's a great time for horror. You know, and actually, you know, interestingly enough, researching these films, you know, Alien was Oscar nominated for its visual effects and won.
Yeah.
Prometheus was nominated for an Oscar nominated Prometheus. For the same, for visual effects, but did not win. It lost out to The Life of Pi. So,
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, so we're going to talk about the 2 Alien prequels, but I think what's really interesting about this is that the more I thought about these 2 films, the more I thought they really fit in this particular series, I think. And we'll talk about this as we go. I feel like Ridley Scott is much more interested in a kind of exploring a sort of technology creation, you know, AI, robots, all of that stuff in these movies more than he is about the aliens, I think, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I looked, and so he didn't get into filmmaking until he was like 40, so, you know, there's still time for me and you yet to make our kind of sci-fi horror masterpieces.
Yeah.
But he was 75 when he made Prometheus and 80 when he made Covenant. He's 88 now, right?
Wow.
So, like, I wonder, you know, thinking about his own life and you know, where he is on his course and, you know, Wayland's character and reflecting. I think a lot of his films are often dealing with, I think he's quite a spiritual person and maybe kind of reflecting with, or, you know, wrestling with that in these films that perhaps do make them a bit more meaty in those respects and AI and its relationship to it.
I think you can feel that tension in them, which may be why they weren't particularly well received, either of them, in that, does it want to be a schlocky genre film? Does it want to be this big philosophical, existential exploration of humanity? And it's both films are kind of, for some people, I think, awkwardly caught between the two, aren't they? I think.
Yeah, it perhaps doesn't quite land in either camp, and then people feel a bit disappointed as a result of that. But I mean, I love Prometheus. I'm going to put it out there now. You know, I'm in that camp.
Excellent.
Maybe the minority. You know,
excellent. I love that. Before we get into Prometheus, let me just quickly ask you about the Alien universe up until this point, right? So we've covered, I believe, on this podcast before, we covered Alien and Aliens, right? The 2 classics. You then obviously had Alien 3, David Fincher, Alien Resurrection. What did you think of? Are you a fan generally of this kind of the Alien franchise?
I am. I was thinking it's perhaps one of the most kind of messy franchises.
Yeah.
And I think that actually makes, you know, if you ask people, that even if you list them, it's quite you know, it's not perhaps universal that they're quite Marmite, a number of the films. Like you can say, right, Aliens and Alien, I mean, that's the order I would put them. But then between Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, it's, you know, it's quite contested. And, you know, and there's, you know, the comic books and the video games and all the other things that go with it. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. I loved it since I was a kid. I got into it via the toys.
Yes.
So
I love this. It was marketed for kids, right?
Marketed for kids, right? So these things come out in like 92, which are by Kenner, I think, and they're all these different types of aliens, all these different xenomorphs. So I had a flying xenomorph and I had like a bull xenomorph. So in my mind, when I sort of knew this was a franchise, I thought, there's going to be all these different types of aliens.
Right.
Because this is what the toys have sold to me, right? So then when I watched the first 2 films, I was about 11 or 12, way too young to be seeing them, but I had a friend whose dad was really cool and let us watch them. And so I'm waiting for all these different types of aliens, and they never materialised. So, like, little kid me was a little bit disappointed, while teenage me was quite excited. And, yeah, I think that they're quite interesting to revisit, I think, as well, that, you know, I didn't particularly like Alien Resurrection when I first watched it, but coming back to it, I think it's actually a really interesting film. It's a messy franchise. It trips up over itself if you think, or, you know, also things like Alien versus Predator and AVP 2, which is, you know,
I think one of the worst films I've ever seen, AV.
Oh, hands down, absolutely awful film.
Just really ineptly made, isn't it? That's the problem.
And no one seemed to care. It's the worst lit film I've ever seen.
You literally can barely see anything in it. It's so bad. And then, of course, recently we had Alien Romulus too, which again sort of divided people. Again, I thought it was a bit naff personally.
I liked it on the first watch. I watched it again for this, and it kind of did the opposite, where I was like, well, actually, it is a bit style over something. I mean, one of the things it does do, which I do like, and I quite like Alien Earth for this, is that although they've come out after the films, they keep that lo-fi tech of the originals. And I think one of the problems, I mean, as much as I like Prometheus and Alien Covenant, I have opinions on, but I don't. They're prequels, but the technology in those is so much more far advanced.
I know,
and I'm like,
so silly.
There's this cognitive dissonance there of like, you're not adhering to your own law in many ways.
I think if there's one thing about Ridley Scott is that we can say is that he does not give two fucks, right? Like, this is the thing. That is the kind of thing. Like, he's such a brilliant, talented guy, but he's so funny in interviews and stuff, because when people flag issues they have with his films, he's just like, go fuck yourself. You haven't made a film, I have, and I feel like that's his attitude through everything,
Yeah. So it's a very realistic film. It looks more realistic than Kingdom of Heaven or Robin Hood, if we're talking about your...
fuck you, thank you very much, fuck you, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, when people flagged that Prometheus was a prequel to Alien, he's like, no, it's not. It's like, sorry, sir. You've set it in your own universe. All right.
I know. He's amazing. I really respect him. Like you say, he's 88. He's still working. He's unbelievable in a lot of ways. Yeah. But my God, it's an up and down filmography, I think we could say, right? Ridley Scott's filmography.
There are way more misses than hits, yes. I would say. It's, he comes from a very artistic background, and I think, his film, I mean, saying that, actually, a lot of his films are really ugly.
That's interesting. That's interesting, because he's actually known for making quite beautiful films a lot of the time, but maybe that's his most well-known work,
Yeah. But it's, I think the thing with him is that when they do land, if you think about even just Alien and Blade Runner, it's kind of back to back, and like how landmark they are. And subsequent film, Gladiator and stuff like that, they are really revered, both commercially and critically.
Yeah, completely. Thelma and Louise. I mean, he's quite eclectic. He's quite versatile in what he does. I think the thing with Ridley Scott, I find, is that he needs a good script. I think he's not very good at spotting a good or a bad script. So some of his films are, and I would argue maybe at least one of the two films we're about to talk about, are quite appallingly written. But he will still direct the fuck out of them. But he just seems to have he doesn't seem to care too much about the script a lot of the time, So I think when he's at his best, it's when he's paired with a really good script and a good story.
Yeah, and I think he kind of has... Maybe it's a healthy thing, the kind of detachment, listening to the DVD commentaries on both these films. And he's a bit kind of nonchalant. He's like, that's quite a good shot, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. I kind of love this about him. He's almost like the opposite to a Tarantino, to a Kubrick, to a person that's like, I'm going to make 8 films and they're going to be my masterpieces. He's just like a guy that loves to work, right? Yeah. And he will just he's prolific. He'll take on another project. Yeah. Some of them will do well. Some of them won't.
And it won't bother him. He's not like an Ari Aster, like, oh my God, that one shot I didn't get and it's going to stay with me forever. He's like, that was the shot. We did the shot.
Yeah. Some things don't work out. He understands the industry. Yeah. He understands how the business works. Obviously, he's very business minded as well. He's a producer.
Yeah.
He worked in advertising, right? So he's got that kind of a brain, I think, too. It's not just about the quote unquote art, I think, for Ridley Scott. And again, I think there is a kind of, maybe there's a slight cynicism in him because of that. Again, I feel like that comes across in him. But again, he makes beautiful films sometimes as well. Like when he's good, there's almost no one better, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And, despite some of the, as you say, the scripts being, quite ropey and undeveloped, he's good with an ensemble cast.
Yes.
Even if those films aren't particularly good, House of Gucci.
Yes.
I was I just watched the director's cut of Napoleon, and that is a long film.
I haven't seen that yet. Yeah,
but he likes an epic. He likes an epic story.
I used to work in sort of EPK stuff where I'd go on film sets and do kind of interviews and sort of little making of featurettes and stuff. And I was on the set for his film, All the Money in the World, the one about the Getty family, and the kidnapping. And obviously that was the film where when I first went on set, Kevin Spacey was playing John Paul Getty or whatever his name is. Like, he was the main guy.
Oh, I forgot about this.
And I even interviewed him on set and everything, and he was in costume. And then, of course, this was the point when there was all that controversy about Kevin Spacey that came out. And Ridley Scott, I think, again, it's really interesting the way Ridley Scott reacted to it. He just immediately went, right, we're firing Kevin Spacey. I'm reshooting all of these scenes with Christopher Plummer. And he was just like determined not to let this ruin his film. He knew that it was going to affect box office. So he was like, it just made sense to just get rid of Kevin and just reshoot it all. And again, he was so matter of fact about it. He didn't waste any time. He reshot those scenes. He stitched it together. The film isn't amazing, but he sort of made it work with Christopher Plummer.
I respect it more now. No, like I completely forgot about it. Because whereas something like, is it Baby Driver, they just try to like the marketing would just be like, don't look over here kind of thing.
I know, yeah, exactly. No, Ridley Scott was literally like, I'm not going to let this guy ruin the potential box office for my film, right? So, like, again, I love this about him. He is very no-nonsense. He's very, like, he's going to get the job done. Doesn't really care what people think of him,
Good on him.
Good on him for that, Good on him. I love it. So, with all that being said, let's get into these two films. So we're going to start with Prometheus, of course, from 2012. James, set the scene for us. Give us the story of Prometheus.
After a very white alien Jim bro, known as an engineer, drinks black goo that breaks him down to a cellular level, starting life on our planet as we know it, we fast forward to a group of scientists led by Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway and funded by the presumed dead Peter Weyland in search to meet their makers. After flight into deep space, in suspended animation and deep sleep, watched over by android David, they arrive to the distant moon LV-223, only to realise gods do not build in straight lines. Exploring the alien architecture for answers awakens the terror inside, where trying to meet their creators brings them face to face with their destruction.
Perfect. What a lovely synopsis. James, so you've already hinted at this. You're a fan of this film?
Yeah, man. I do. I think I like it because it kind of go back to what you were saying earlier on about the films in general, is that I watched them as a teenager, and so in preparation for when this film came out, and I saw it at the IMAX, which I think really helped it, the visual splendor. Me and my friends, we did a marathon of all the other films, and then we went to a midnight screening of Prometheus at the IMAX, and it was sold out. And I think that's the kind of viewing experience you want with it. Yes, there's problems with it, and if you look at the letterbox and it's either a 2-star or 4-star, or even further afield. And I just really enjoyed it. And I think if it wasn't an alien film, if he had just done it as like a sci-fi horror in and of itself, it would be too close to Alien that people would have questions.
Yeah.
And I think because it's so removed from the Alien franchise, because it's doing other things, that it's frustrated fans because it didn't give them the payoff that he wanted. But I like it. I've rewatched it a bunch of times for this, and I do really, really like it.
I mean, I don't hate it, but I think it is. There's things about it I find frustrating, and I remember the excitement for this film. I remember the excitement we all had for this film. Right, the trailer looked incredible. The visuals in this film are stunning. Like, I think it is one of the most beautiful looking films in the series, if not in Ridley Scott's whole filmography. And it is also crammed with ideas, with really interesting, big, existential, philosophical, sort of sci-fi ideas, right? That link to stuff like Blade Runner and Battlestar Galactica and various other things. And but going back to what we've just been talking about with Ridley Scott, I think that I find the dialogue like teeth-gratingly bad at times. Like, for me, there's something about the writing of this, the execution of it, that feels so, I don't know, first draft almost, like people kind of talking to each other about the themes of the film, and there's a lot, minor characters that just sound like cartoon characters. There's that one guy that's like, I'm a geologist, I like rocks, I love rocks and stuff. Like, there's just so much about it where I'm like, this is so laughably bad at points.
Yeah.
Look, I'm just a geologist. I like rocks, I love rocks. Now, it's clear you two don't give a shit about rocks, but what you do seem to care about is gigantic dead bodies. And I don't really have anything to contribute in the gigantic dead body arena! I'm gonna go back to the ship, if you don't mind.
And yet also, it's not unenjoyable. Like, absolutely. Even when I rewatched it this week, I thought it rollicked along. I had a lot of fun with it. It's got some great gory, gruey set pieces in it, you know.
Yeah.
And I like thinking about how it eventually connects to Alien as well, although that is a funny separate conversation we can have. But yes.
It's, the visual splendor of it is just, I mean, it's shot in 3D, shot for IMAX.
Yeah.
But I still like the fact that for the most part, Scott made the decision that it's, practical effects over CGI. And one of the scenes that I'm sure we'll talk about later on, they originally shot that for CGI, and he's like, it doesn't work. So they turned it back into to kind of real effects, which I think Covenant suffers from.
Yeah.
So I think there's some, it comes at that time as well, 2012, I think, where people want another film, and they want, the great thing with the franchise, isn't it? And I think what I do like as well is that the first 4 films are really about Ripley.
Yes.
But the first film sets up so much more than that, who's the space jockey, how to get there, the kind of Lovecraftian imaging, like, I need to know and explore this. And it's doing that to a degree. So I like that it did go, I'm not going to tell a Ripley story again.
But I would posit to you, James, did we really want to know about the space jockey and about that stuff in Alien? Because I know what you mean. That stuff in Alien is so interesting and wild and Lovecraftian and crazy, and it's completely glossed over, and we never, for the rest of the film series, find out who that space jockey thing was and what was going on in that ship and how those eggs got there. And that was something that I know fascinated Ridley Scott. He said in interviews, I always found it interesting that the space jockey was in that one scene and nobody really explored it. And, and so that's what he wanted to explore. But I think this also suffers from that prequel-itis for me, which is like, do we need all of this explained? Was that part of the magic of Alien? I don't know, that we didn't know. I don't know.
You're damned if you do and damned if you don't, isn't it? If they'd done another Rips, they'd be like, we've done this, we know that. And, I think the thing as well, and he talks about, is that, originally the space jockey, that was the skeleton. Yes. And I think the letdown is that it's then becomes this suit, this exoskeleton. So I'm like, it's a cop-out, the Alien Gym Bros for me.
The Alien Gym Bros. Well, I had a problem with the Alien Gym Bros as well. Yeah, exactly. And now I sound like I'm being harsh on it. I actually do enjoy this film. I would say it's like a 3-star movie for me. I think it's like a medium. It's got some great stuff in it, and I think it's got some terrible stuff in it as well, But it's probably by no means the worst in the Alien franchise, No. So there's a lot to kind of admire about it. And again, packed with ideas. It's ambitious, and it does look absolutely stunning. But what I was going to say was, a lot of people, when this movie did come out, really hate it, right? Why do you think people hated it? What was the fans' issue with this film, do you think?
I think we've kind of alluded to part of it. I think the script and I think some of the characters are not particularly likable. Even with the first film, and the second film, actually, there are characters you really get to know and are rooting for. Yeah. And, the first film is very working class and kind of against the corporation. The corporation is the big evil, right? The big boss, if anything. Yeah. And then I think when you start moving into this territory where you are sort of embedded within a corporation crew and, I think it's even worse for any corporation. I just don't really care for many of these characters. Charlie, Elizabeth Shaw's partner, is a douchebag. And so I think, for me, Idris Elba's character is actually probably the most interesting, and it has that kind of working class kind of background to him. Yes. So I think that's maybe part of it. The things that we feel affectionate for the original film, they didn't Scott wasn't that interested in replaying that. And again, that's a double shot because Romulus does try to do that, and then it becomes too much like fan service. So
I know it's really. You know what?
It's almost impossible to get right.
It is impossible to get right. You're absolutely right when you said you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. With this whole franchise, I've been pretty consistently disappointed to one extent or another with everything from Alien 3 onwards. And I even kind of had this conversation after I came out of Alien Romulus, which I was quite excited for, and I came out disappointed. And I had to kind of say to myself, like, what do I even want in an Alien film? Like, what am I expecting at this point? And I honestly don't know. Like, do I want it to be just a bunch of blue-collar working-class people on a ship getting picked off by a monster? Do I want it to be much bigger and more ambitious and philosophical and explore the origins of the creature? Like, I don't really know anymore because nothing can quite achieve that magic of the first two for me. And I can never quite make up my mind what it is that is missing in all of these other movies since.
I think because they're such landmark films. Like, if you compare it to Predator, because obviously they're part of the same universe. Yes. And I think the last three Predator films I really like Predator Badlands. I think there's... And
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard great things.
I really like it. And again, dealing with AI and androids and Chosen Family, which I guess is a bit like Alien Romulus. But Prey and then the kind of animated shorts, like, I think they're real bangers and they're doing really interesting things and expanding the universe in interesting ways.
Yes.
But Predator 1 and Predator 2, perhaps not in the same ballpark as Alien and Aliens.
Yes.
So there is that kind of, it's not burdened by its own legacy in the same way.
That's true.
So it can take some more risks. Whereas I think with the Alien franchise, that it is essentially that, isn't it? The first two films, you either love the old dark house creepiness or you love the romp of the second one, and it speaks to different tastes and even our own taste as we grow older, whatever.
Yeah.
And then everything else, as you say, does feel a bit like law of diminishing returns. But what more could we? I mean, I've watched a few episodes of Alien Earth, and that seems to be on the same kind of trajectory. Like, I like parts of it, and parts of it I'm like, we've covered this, we've done this, but I mean, it's all part of the same diegesis, it's all part of the same story world. So it's a tough gig, and I think maybe Scott's gone into that. It's just like, do you know what? Because he has that kind of attachment, I'm going to do the thing I'm interested in and put it in this story.
Exactly.
Because actually, Prometheus is his first sequel to his own franchise.
Yeah.
He's done Gladiator 2 and obviously did Covenant as well. So both the sequels and prequels. But he'd never really done that before, so I don't think he felt particularly attached to these IPs and stuff like that. So he's coming back, but he's doing on his terms and the questions he wants to. He is.
And again, I like that. I like that it's not Prometheus is its own thing. Obviously, it doesn't even have the word alien in the title. Like, it is clearly going for something different. It's just in the execution for me. There are some slight janky moments. I get I lolled a couple of moments. Like, Logan Marshall Green, Charlie saying, we want to be creators. We want to create life. That's what we do. That's what we do. And then Elizabeth Shaw goes, I can't create life. And then she starts crying. And then they have sex. And then she gets pregnant. And it's like, I was like, oh God, like, I don't know. Like, again, it's the writing for me that suffers,
Yeah, it's, there are, is Vickers an android? No, because she goes to have sex.
Right, exactly. It's so fun. And again, like, when you compare it to Alien, which is like, you are really dropped into this very real world where the characters are sitting around the table talking about wages and talking about whatever, and it feels like it's a lived-in place with real people communicating in that world. And I just don't know if I buy that any of these people sound like real human beings communicating in this movie.
Yeah, there's that. I think that thing with Alien is that it feels very lived in. That this is a long journey. That they know each other inside out. They're probably a bit sick of each other. There are clashes of personalities that feel organic.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, you have your man that loves rocks, and then you have the biologist, and he's like, I don't like you. And it's like, where does that hostility kind of come from?
I know.
And I think that would be a problem, I think, with both the films, is there's a kind of, it's too fast in many ways. To reach kind of the gravitas of maybe the first films. Even with Alien Covenant, it's like, oh, we're going to start with a death. We're going to invert the birthing scene, and that's really tragic. It's like, it's not earned in the way that the first films are.
Agreed. Yeah.
So
agreed.
I think, yeah, that's where, and actually, Prometheus, beautiful set scenes, but its horror, perhaps, compared to the originals, is maybe not, the philosophical things come over the horror, which, Alien Covenant perhaps readdresses.
That's true. That is absolutely true. So the movie begins, as you pointed out in your plot synopsis, with this. Again, we know immediately we're not just in an alien film here, because we begin in this kind of weird, otherworldly kind of place where we see this giant, muscular, godlike creature with sort of blue skin, and he's ripped to fuck.
Yeah.
Drinks a potion and then just kind of dissolves, and bits of his body kind of drop into this massive river.
Yeah.
What do you think of this? What this story ultimately is about, which is about humans meeting their creators, essentially, right? And their creators are these giant, and they call them engineers in this movie, right? But they are just like slightly more kind of big, ripped versions of us, essentially, with bald heads.
Yeah. Like giant Greg Wallaces or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It has been, they're very white as well. And I think, for as good as Ridley Scott is perhaps doing gender, his engagement with, Edward Said has the concept of Orientalism, the kind of Western constructions of modern man, and Ridley Scott's depictions of the Middle East and other ethnicities are problematic a lot of the time, and I think this film also falls into that in many ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's if the original films were sort of deconstructing gender and making that part of the horror, I think there is something here that speaks with the themes of the series this season, is that this is about the breaking down of scientific knowledge and religious thought, and in doing so, if those are the binaries that have traditionally been held up against each other, and this film goes beyond it, then it's charting new territory, isn't it? Are these engineers deities, or are they engineers? And their purpose and all these kind of things. So it's asking these bigger questions that I think don't neatly fit into science and religion, which is often a theme in both. Some of our characters are scientists, but they also have faith. And
absolutely.
But it took me the first time I watched it, I didn't quite get the opening. I was like, where am I? What's going on? Is this Earth? Is this not Earth?
Yes, absolutely.
So it does lend itself to those kind of repeat watches.
It does. It absolutely does. And again, like I do love these kinds of ideas that this movie is getting at. Talked about this in depth a couple of weeks ago with the show Battlestar Galactica. I talked about it a lot with Blade Runner, using the concept of like androids, or whatever we want to call them. Ex Machina does this too. This idea of like, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to, quote unquote, have a soul? If you are created by another corporeal being, what does that mean about the existence of God, potentially, and stuff? And are we all products of something older and something bigger that has created us in the way that we have created robots and they've evolved and stuff? And this, it feels like ultimately that's the stuff that Ridley wants to explore in these movies, right? Like, we'll get to the character of David, but I feel like David is really the character that I feel like Ridley Scott is interested in these movies.
Definitely. And I think there's that idea of, what do we do with that knowledge? And I think that plays out in these characters, isn't it? Some of them want to go because science and moving forward. Yeah. Others want, it's a question of going backwards and getting a sense of these are these kind of deities. What is the purpose? Why do we exist? And that's some heavy questions.
Yeah.
Is this about the elixir of life? And the fear of death and what happens beyond it potentially, but also again, framed in this kind of corporate entity that of these films is, and to David, is, do we want to go because we want to surpass these gods?
Yes.
By that, if we have knowledge of it, then we can overcome it in some ways. And Peter Wayland almost kind of is kind of that kind of character.
Yes.
So I think that is that double-edged sword that we talked about earlier on. That people are going for very different reasons, aren't they? And
exactly.
And then when they find, and also when they meet them, or the kind of the remnants of them, how do people feel about that? Charlie's character is really disappointed. I was like, why? He's so like, It's just the worst. But like, he's
the
so
worst,
disappointed and gets
isn't he?
drunk. And I'm like, I think your expectations in all of this should be quite
I know.
measured.
What did he think was going to happen? as
Yeah.
well? It's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that is really interesting. Like, what they all want to get out of this idea of meeting their maker.
Yeah.
And again, this goes back to the Frankenstein. This goes back to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in a way, right? And how the creature feels about Frankenstein, his creator, and this idea of like almost, do you want to kind of surpass your creator? Do you want to destroy them? Do you want to destroy your parents, Or do you want to ask them questions about why am I here? Why did you make me? And all of that kind of thing. And again, it's interesting that we kind of flip that. And in this movie, we are the creations, right? We are in the middle of this kind of interesting timeline where we've been created by these bigger beings, but we've also created these androids who kind of understand what they are and understand that they've been created, but actually maybe are stronger and more capable than us. And I guess ultimately we'll get into this, but there's quite a nihilistic kind of result to this whole mystery, isn't there? In that engineers designed us and then decided actually this was a mistake and they need to get rid of us, right?
Yeah.
And so they
they
created
might
the
not
aliens.
be wrong. I mean,
Yeah, I know, right? I think the more we go on, the longer the more that seems quite apparent.
yeah. But I think that's it. It's in many ways quite humbling, isn't it? Because there's these kind of illusions of grandeur that we go there and this will give us the knowledge that we actually want.
Yeah.
But it's quite the opposite. It's like, well, it's almost arbitrary, and that you don't really matter, and destruction is inevitable or just as important as creation.
Yeah.
And that's something as humans I think we really struggle with, isn't it? And that's that because these alien beings sort of don't fit within the kind of binary of science and religion, they just don't quite see it in the same way, that it's like, we can make you, we can break you.
Yeah.
And we have to look back in the mirror and go, okay, we're not that special in many ways.
Exactly.
And that's the conversation that David has with Charlie, about we made you because we could.
Because we could. That's literally it, isn't it? Yeah.
You think we wasted our time coming here, don't you?
Your question depends on me understanding what you hope to achieve by coming here.
What we hope to achieve was to meet our makers, to get answers. Why they even made us in the first place.
Why do you think your people made me?
We made you because we could.
Can you imagine how disappointing it would be for you to hear the same thing from your creator?
So let's rewind and talk a little bit about these engineer figures, these godlike creatures that I guess created us, right? What's going on in that opening scene, James, where we see one of them drink a potion and dissolve and fall into the waterfall? Like, how do you read what is happening here with regards to these engineers?
So, good question.
Yeah.
So,
I suppose we're not meant to know ultimately, but any ideas?
I think it's the starting of life on the planet, I think. In the alternative opening, it's more ceremonial. There's more of the big dudes in their kind of cloaks, but in the main release, it's just a singular figure. And it sort of breaks down to a molecular DNA level, which we get confirmed literally visually. The DNA matches. Yeah. And then that is meant to be the start of life. But this is my question, right? So does that do away with evolution? Or if not, did they know that we were then going to be sort of these, early life and then kind of these aqua kind of things, and they come off the land and birds and primates. So
maybe that's what
that still will happen.
Maybe that's what it is, which is why it goes into water. Is it like that's the start of evolution?
Yeah, that's it. And that's start of evolution, because they talk about, you're undoing however many things of Darwinism and stuff, so that's my reading of it. But also even that is it's like, well, did they know? Because you're humanoid, right? But we go through all these different iterations of evolution of lots of different animals, but we end at humans.
But I suppose that's not dissimilar to what we see with the alien, right? Which is that it to begin with, it's just a black goo, and then it evolves and evolves and evolves throughout these two movies, So
yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, the big thing with the alien and xenomorph is that it's each iteration through being on a host body, shapes what it is when it comes out, you know.
Yes.
And
yes.
in some ways that's also humans. That is evolution, isn't it? This kind of natural selection and stuff like that. So maybe they knew that this is where they were maybe going to end. Ridley Scott calls them like the gardeners of the universe, or like they're sowing these seeds. They go to different planets and they sow these seeds, I think is their argument.
So it is because it's interesting because, again, we call them engineers as if they very deliberately created and molded humanity, but they sort of didn't. They destroyed themselves and they put their DNA in a ocean and then kind of create evolution from that. Like, I don't really... Yeah, it's like, it's all a bit vague, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's lots of references to Paradise Lost. You know, the kind of Adam and Eve and Satan, and which obviously plays heavily into Frankenstein as well. Yeah. And actually Alien Covenant was originally called Alien Paradise Lost, and they changed the note. So there is that kind of the fall of something, and as a result, the creation that comes out of it. But I also think Scott perhaps isn't that, you know, it starts the film, doesn't it? And it's the thing that we want to go back to, because if that is whenever this is, you know, a millennia ago, and beyond, and then we jump through to kind of, you know, quote unquote modern day. You know, it's the title sequence. So he's not interested in how we got there. It's about returning to it and the questions that we have where we are now. Yeah,
absolutely. Because then we meet Elizabeth Shaw and her partner Charlie, and they have been finding all of these cave drawings, right? With what they, again, very, very immediately assume is some sort of map of the stars, right?
And an invitation.
And an invitation.
Where's the RSVP?
These two will be a nightmare, right? They just invite themselves to your house, being like, we thought we got an invitation.
We gate crashed your planet.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I suppose we don't know, and maybe that's the point of this, but we don't really know what these cave paintings ultimately are, because even though in some ways they're right, these two, because it actually does take them to a planet where they meet their creators, it doesn't feel like that was an invitation to do so, does it? Like, I don't feel like they actually wanted humans to come to this planet and meet them. I don't know.
And I think that's a really good point, in the sense that the captain realizes is that this isn't their planet, their home planet. This is a moon. Yeah. And it's a moon that is used for biotech.
Right.
And again, it's sort of biotech, which would lead us to think a kind of scientific development, but also it has kind of religious architecture, or seems very ceremonial.
Yes.
Which again is beyond our kind of realm of thinking. So there is and maybe that is the other side of technology. It's like the hubris of man. Yeah. That we can do this because we have the money, we have the technology, we have the know-how. And it's like, well, actually, if you stayed at home, you might have been all right, you know?
Everything would have been fine. Exactly. Yeah, I think it absolutely, again, going back to Frankenstein, it is a story about hubris, isn't it? I mean, you can feel that, particularly in the character of Charlie, but some of the other characters too, this absolute hubris that they have, so then it feels a little bit more like we're in an Alien film, because we get the classic setup of these guys have been in hypersleep. We meet our android David, who is kind of pottering around the ship. He's watching a bit of Peter O'Toole, and he's, you know,
he's bleaching his hair.
He's bleaching his hair. Sure, I mean, fair enough. He's probably been bored for quite a long time on that ship, right? While everyone else sleeps for years or whatever. So let's talk about David, Michael Fassbender. What do you think of that performance and this character of David?
It's a good performance, isn't it? But he's playing a kind of android. I think the subtleties of his performance are better, isn't it? Because ultimately he's playing this thing of he is subservient. He's the butler in many ways. Yeah. And he obviously has a kind of program, a task that he's with for Wayland, his father, who is the closest thing he has to a son that's not his son, even though Wayland has a daughter. But also is. He is quite misanthropic. I don't think he likes humans. He knows he's better than them. Yeah. So he's doing this kind of dance, isn't he? Where he, on the one hand, he is serving them, and if they ask him to do stuff, he does it. But also is perhaps serving the company in the same way that Ash is. But actually, beyond all of that, and that's definitely teased out in the sequel, is that he is also very philosophical in his own thoughts about the kind of hierarchy of man and beast and where do androids sit in all of this. And actually he places himself above all of this. So it is interesting from that respect. And I think he does, he on his own little journey, that's an interesting performance.
I agree. I think he's great. I think he is probably my favourite part about both these films. I think he does Michael Fassbender has that kind of amazing sort of charisma and physicality about him to play this character. And I think David, just in general, I think there's some irony that the robot maybe is the most is the character that maybe we can connect to more than any of the other characters in these films.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels that way,
And the other characters can't seem to read him. And I think maybe that's another issue that people have. And he clearly has an agenda, which we can read from quite early on.
He's a bit moustache twirling villain, actually.
Yeah,
at times,
quite Vincent Price, and definitely in the second film.
Yeah.
But people are like, oh, well, you can't feel this. And he's like, oh, maybe I can. And it's like, how do you not? But, maybe scientists are better with rocks than people. They're not sociologists.
Absolutely. And I don't mind that. And I like the absolute dismissal of him. And I suppose that has been present throughout all of the films. This real, human beings do not like the androids in these films, right? Obviously, for obvious reasons at times, like with Ash in the first movie. But then in the second movie, when we get Lance Henriksen...
Yeah.
And Sigourney Weaver's like, you didn't tell me there was going to be a fucking android on this ship, and no one really likes him, and there's this kind of mistrust and distrust and disrespect for these robot type creatures, right? And they definitely have that attitude towards David. I like that in the second movie they pad out a bit more about David was part of this kind of line of models that was kind of so super smart and almost emotionally intelligent to the point where they creeped people out, right? They're a bit uncanny valley, and so they actually had to dumb this model down in further iterations, right? So we meet a much newer model of the Fassbender android in the next movie, and he's much less dangerous and he's much more subservient, right? He's much more he has less of a personality, less humanity, and
even their accents, that kind of Britishness, stiff upper lip that has a kind of air of kind of upper classness about it compared to a kind of Walter, which feels a kind of much softer character. But I think Fassbender as well, I think he has quite an intimidating presence.
He does.
He's quite a tall figure, and the kind of seriousness that means that you would that is quite a foreboding kind of person. So I think even when he is being the android and he's meant to be kind of subservient, it's they've casted him well, actually, I think, for that.
They have. Funnily enough, about 2 weeks ago, we discussed Ex Machina with his wife, Alicia Vikander, playing a robot as well. And it's these two are both astonishing. And because they both look so perfect, just as human beings, and they both pull off this perfect, slightly uncanny thing of playing these sorts of characters, But
then they will leave you on a planet or leave you in a room.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a plan, But yeah, no, I think he's great. I think the character of David is fascinating. And I think it's interesting that, again, the humans are so dumb in this film, but maybe that is part of it too. That's part of the point. We've got humans creators that are these really, really uber powerful things that can destroy us. And then we've got our creations that are these uber smart things that could also destroy us. And we're these kind of slight idiots in the middle who think we're the top of the food chain almost,
Yeah, and it is that thing of which I guess is kind of religious in its kind of sentiments, that gods have created humans in their own image, but also Prometheus, one iteration of that myth is that he created humans out of clay.
Right.
So there's still, so there is, both there's the technology side, giving them fire and the kind of as first technology and civilization, but also this idea of, if we're going to create androids, what are we going to make them look like? Oh, we'll make them look like us.
Yeah.
And then we have to kind of reconcile with that. So we do that by being mean to them or whatever, and kind of bullyish to them. We make them wear the helmet because the helmet makes us feel safer.
Right.
And
it's so interesting, isn't it?
And then what were we expecting then if we met our maker? Would they not treat us with the same kind of cruelty? It's think that we're dumb.
Right. which, you know, they absolutely do. And, you know,
we are.
So speaking of dumb, let's talk about these characters that wake up from hypersleep. Let's talk about the crew of the Prometheus ship. Again, I know that these films all have a bit of this to them. You know, even James Cameron's Aliens, the crew, they're all quite broad stroke characters, aren't they, in a lot of ways? And this movie absolutely carries on in that tradition. I actually think Noomi Rapace is great as Elizabeth Shaw. I think she kind of, and actually Charlize Theron, as much as, again, her character feels a bit two-dimensional, she is just such a good actress that she brings quite a lot to it, I think. Yeah,
and they are kind of, you know, if we are thinking about the legacies of Ripley, they are the two sides of it in many ways, aren't they?
Right.
And the fact that Scott has been smart enough to break that character into two. You know, we see when Charlize Theron wakes up, she's doing the push-ups.
To get her, and of course she's the one who later won't let Charlie on the ship because of quarantine kind of protocol, which is exactly what Ripley tried to do in Alien, right, as well. So you're right.
But there's also a kind of suggestion that she could also be an android. You know, when we see David come around the corner and she's just kind of staring there in the blue. It's quite an unsettling scene. And
she feels android-like, doesn't she?
Yeah, and she overpowers him.
And and it turns out she is Wayland's daughter, right? Yeah. And so, of course, that's the other thing, is that these two are sort of like step siblings in a way, because David is also Wayland's, like, you know, son almost, isn't he? You know? So.
Yeah, and actually this is perhaps an interesting reversal of the original films, is that, you know, whereas we have Mother and Ripley and the kind of, and even, you know, the queen of the xenomorph, that this actually, Prometheus is a lot more of a masculine film in that respect. Yeah, you have Wayland, you have David, you have our big alien engineers that are kind of very hyper masculine. So yeah, it's the kind of flip of that. And I guess Mother Nature has these kind of feminist connotations, but mankind, you know, again, a kind of masculine, and things like patriarchy that come through religion and science. Yeah. So, and I think Scott is smart enough to be wrestling with some of these things. So the fact that she is sort of, because she's not male, she is a kind of disappointment, and that's quite a good reveal. I think that, you know, she kind of says father as he as he totter out Guy Pearce in his kind of weird old body.
Absolutely. And it is a great cast, isn't it? When you watch it again now, I was like, holy shit, we've got, you know, as well as Charlize Theron, we've got, you know, Logan Marshall Green, we've got Sean Harris, Rafe Spall, Kate Dickie is there, Benedict Wong, Idris Elba. Yeah, exactly.
Patrick Wilson
pops up.
Is the dad.
Yeah. He's got such dad energy, Patrick Wilson. He always is. He's always the dad. Like all of them great. And so that's another thing I think that slightly elevates the script, actually, is just how good all of these people are to watch.
Yeah, there are good performances all round, and I think they lean into the types of characters that they are. Yeah. Like, I think, you know, if someone's being an arsehole, they are purposely doing it. It's not kind of by the by. So yeah, that, you know, and you know, with horror and you know, particularly the role of Shaw, you know, the journey she goes on, you know, there's good range in that, and the body horror, and how she responds, you know, she's quite a physical actress.
Definitely. Should we talk about Guy Pearce as Wayland as well, because this feels a bit clunky in this movie too, doesn't it? And again, there is something of a kind of prequel-itis to this movie, because it's like, okay, why are we seeing Wayland as a dying man who's probably about 90, but he's so clearly played by Guy Pearce in prosthetics, right?
Oh, I know. It's for me, it's the worst bit of the film. And in all the DVD extras, so if you want to buy the Blu-ray special edition, there's over 7 hours of extras.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Why you would do that, I don't know. But there's lots of world building. So there's like, he does a TED Talk in 2023 as
Wayland,
middle-aged Guy Pearce and Peter Wayland. So I think Scott's being very mindful of the kind of
extra,
the extra of this, and that he wants to go backwards into that story, as you know, Wayland and all that. And also in the sequel, you know, the opening shot, he is a younger man.
Exactly. You can absolutely feel that. You go, okay, we're going to see more of Wayland when he's young.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, of course.
But it just looks terrible. He looks like a testy. He's such bad.
He does.
It's just for all the splendor and all the beautifulness. You immediately go, oh, that's Guy Pearce dressed up in an old man.
You do immedially. And it takes you out of it because you go, okay, why am I seeing Guy Pearce like this? We're gonna go backwards in time. We're gonna see, we're gonna get a prequel to this prequel. How is this gonna work? It is a bit distracting, I think, isn't it? And ultimately, and again, I kind of like actually the simplicity and the sort of silliness, but I like it that ultimately this whole mission is because this guy is dying and he doesn't want to die and he wants to meet his creator so that he doesn't die of old age, essentially, right? I actually kind of like that this whole thing that has cost this man billions of dollars and all of these people's lives is just because he's getting old and he doesn't want to die yet, essentially, right?
And also the best thing is that he finally meets his maker and the guy's like, who the fuck's this guy? Breaks his son, breaks David, and clobbers him and kills him with his own son, which has very kind of, kind of mythology and religion and all that. So he is killed, he is destroyed by his own creation when he meets his own creator. So it's...
Yeah, I like that. So we land on the planet, and this is where it starts to get a bit more kind of gruey horror movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When we go into the big ship, the big kind of horseshoe-shaped thing that obviously we saw in the original film. And we have these kind of chambers and this door and the vases of the goo and everything. How do you find all of this stuff, the alien, biological, gruey element to this movie, and how that ultimately links to the xenomorphs that we see in the earlier films as well?
I think that it does a good job in that it didn't just give us eggs, because that would be the most obvious. And I know the vase perhaps is visually kind of similar to that, but there's enough there to be like, what is this? It's making us ask more questions.
Yes.
And I think for the most part, people would be going into Prometheus largely knowing the franchise.
Of course. You're waiting for the aliens to pop up.
Yeah,
right?
you are. Which maybe is another reason that fans got frustrated because there isn't enough alien, or indeed any alien in it. So I think that is a really intriguing thing. Obviously informed by Giger's design. So visually, it's putting us in that same level of unease.
Yeah, completely.
You go there and we get these ghostly holograms.
I really loved all those visuals, actually. The kind of hologram stuff looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah. And again, kind of playing into the first film of like, well, we see this, but we don't know what's going on. And we immediately think, oh, well, it must have been because a chest burst has gone out or whatever, those kind of things. So it's I think it's playing on audience expectation in a nice way. And again, it's although one of the things I kind of forgot about it is that, on the one hand, this is a kind of religious looking space. There's the kind of mirror on the ceiling that moves, and they talk about, well, we've disrupted the ecosystem. Shaw realizes this, that perhaps we are now making this bad stuff happen. But then you have that incredible scene of the storm coming in. So nature or a quote unquote act of God. And you have it's really kind of striking imagery. So you get that sense that this is a very uninviting environment for both with nature and the kind of the things they find within these buildings.
This is it. I mean, the Giga stuff is just, it will never not be so effective and powerful, right? Like, no matter how many times we come back to these designs, it chills me to the bone, when they step inside these places, you're right, it almost look kind of temple-like kind of places, but from hell, or from some Lovecraftian hell,
very Lovecraftian. And that is, that's essentially what another part of the film is that we are almost inconsequential to this environment, isn't it?
Completely.
We are powerless, physically, scientifically.
Yeah, the whole thing is very Lovecraftian, isn't it? That we are insignificant, tiny little bugs, who are our brains are going to pop at the large scale threat and power of these beings, which of course, and these beings that we can't ever quite get our heads around, you know? Like, I think that's the other thing that I do love about the alien and the xenomorph and even the evolution of the alien that we see in these two movies is like, you can't quite get a handle on what they are and how they work and what their form is. And there are so, we were talking before we started recording, but there are so many videos, James, aren't there, online, and YouTube videos and stuff that's like, here's how the xenomorph works and here is how it evolved. And because there's kind of, you start with the black goo and then the black goo has to, ends up in Charlie's body, and then Charlie has sex with a woman and then she gives birth to this little octopus type thing, but that's not quite yet the xenomorph, right? But then the octopus thing maybe attaches itself to an engineer and then maybe bursts out from there, and so then it becomes the next stage. And so again, it's this forever kind of changing, evolving thing. And I actually really like that about this and Alien Covenant. Like, we never quite get to the stage, do we, where we're at the actual full xenomorph that we see in the first Alien movie.
No, I think that's, maybe again that's why it frustrated people, but I think that's quite a bold move to be like, we're not just going to give you the xenomorph. There's more to it, and there's a lot of amateur David Attenboroughs out there that are explaining the biology of these things, but it works. I think that actually, for all the inconsistencies and retconning that it does on the franchise, actually the evolutionary moves work in a way that actually kind of reflects the engineers themselves. So they might go to different planets and different evolutionary journeys happen, and we get different species. And actually, the xenomorph is also kind of emblematic of that. These kind of proto-xenomorphs, whatever you want to call them.
Yes, exactly.
But they still do things we recognise, don't we? There's still kind of bursting and face rape and all the other stuff that makes the franchise what it is.
All the stuff that makes them probably the most terrifying monsters in cinema history, for my money. I really do think that there's something about particularly the face-huggery iterations of these monsters that gets us to our core, right? There's something about it, the way it is all to do with kind of impregnating, and like you say, there's a kind of rape imagery to it, and it's pulsating, and it kind of looks like genitals, but it also looks like animals, and there's something, everything about it feels like it is designed to repel and unnerve us in different kind of Freudian ways.
Definitely, seemingly, again, part of science beyond science. We can't control it, we can't contain it, we can't understand it, and that's ultimately why we find it so frightening.
And I do think the body horror works in this movie. Like when the black goo thing starts to come to life and it goes into the guy's spacesuit and kind of buries its way into his face and his head and everything, and I love it. And when Charlie gets infected too, and in these two movies, it's making the xenomorph, or what will become the xenomorph, this kind of pathogen, this kind of like virus almost, right? This like biological thing that gets inside our body and infects us. And again, there's something really kind of frightening, I find, about that.
And kind of mimics kind of evolution on Earth, isn't it? We start with these kind of worm-like things.
Yes.
And then they have these kind of almost eel-like fish.
Yeah.
And then they become kind of amphibian, and then before you know it, we've got our kind of squid octopus thing, which, maybe this is more for last season, but I really find squid and octopus terrifying. It's like one of the animals that scares me. I can't make sense of it.
They're amazing creatures, aren't they? They're like super smart as well. They're amazing.
And there's octopus that can climb out of water and climb over land. I'm like, nope.
I know. Yeah. And they look, when you see videos of them moving on land, it is the most unnerving, uncanny thing, isn't it? Yeah.
And
I know.
It's just and I think that was a smart move as well, isn't it? Is that you are creating other sort of monstrous entities within the kind of xenomorph zoo. And that's frightening, because I think, when that scene where it comes out of shore, I reckon most people are expecting to see some sort of xenomorph-like thing, and actually to really undermine your expectations, but give us something that is equally as scary or impactful. I think it's a really smart move, as you say, around the body horror.
What do you think David's ultimate plan is in this movie? We see him kind of collect the goop. He spikes Charlie's drink with it, knowing that he's going to infect him. Is it as simple as he wants to destroy his creators? He wants to destroy the humans on this ship. Like, what do you think he's thinking?
That's a really good question, because I think on the one hand, he's also trying to serve his father, right? You don't really... I mean, you get it more in Alien Covenant in the opening, where he seems sort of disappointed himself by Wayland. But there seems to be this, he's asking the kind of same kind of questions as the humans, really, kind of what's beyond this and how valuable man is, and we can see that. So it comes from, I guess, a place of curiosity like humans, but also that builds into his own kind of megalomania that he is a god in some way.
Yeah, exactly. But it happens at that exact moment too, where Charlie is mocking David and putting him down, right?
Yep.
And is being a dick. So there's almost just a bit of kind of like very human, almost spite in David, I think, as well, isn't there? There's almost, because he's not like that necessarily with Elizabeth and some of the other characters, but he does not like Charlie, I think, as well, you know? So that's interesting.
I do like that irony of him, of Charlie going, here's mud in your eye, and then he wakes up and obviously he's got a worm in his eye.
Yeah.
It's not entirely clear why David is perhaps behaving the way that he does. You know, he's on this journey because he's been sent there, as part of the crew, and is there to serve. Yeah, it's the kind of contempt he might have for people that then. But he's also a very curious being, isn't he? He's trying to consume all this knowledge, and him and Shaw kind of reconcile their differences, even though he wanted to keep the alien in her, and makes quite the cruel joke about, I didn't think you had it in you. Sorry, cruel joke.
I know.
Super camp.
So camp.
But then he wants to go on the journey with her, and
but again, is that just self-preservation on his part, because he needed somebody to carry his head and fix him and get him to the next place, I suppose, because then we learn in the next movie he ultimately destroys Elizabeth, right? He uses her for his experiments and she ends up chest bursted or whatever.
He becomes more human than the humans.
He's and maybe that is ultimately what it was. It's about self-preservation and freedom, isn't it? I think ultimately he doesn't, and again I think we get a line to that effect in the next movie, don't we, that he feels like he wasn't designed to be subservient. He wasn't designed to work for people,
Yeah, it's better to rule hell or something, he isn't saying.
Yeah, reign in hell rather than serve in heaven or something like that.
That's right, yeah. Which, kind of it feels like Paradise Lost, doesn't it? And those kind of things. So, he has his own agenda, but I think, again, not knowing it entirely, that it gives it, that makes him creepy and unnerving.
And so are we to believe, again, I know that this is not completely explained, but the engineers decide humanity was a mistake. We're going to destroy them. We're going to create this almost biological weapon in these vases that is going to wipe humanity out. Is that their plan? Are they planning on taking those vases to Earth, let's say?
I think so, yeah. So they realise, again, because everyone's super smart, this is the language they use and we can work the ship, and they realise that they're plotting a course for Earth to send these vases, and these vases would,
so they were going to basically do what we see David do in the next movie, which is like drop them all down on Earth and just watch it go fucking destroy everyone.
But presumably, because this goo is much like, because it's the goo that the engineer drinks at the beginning of the film, is that in some ways it would be a kind of evolutionary restart.
Yeah.
Because this is the whole thing with the goo, is that it creates these evolutionary kind of periods in people. The fact that we say Charlie, he realises, but also your man that loves rocks.
Yeah.
When he has, there's that beautiful scene when the acid of the eel thing like makes his helmet go into his face and he falls into the goo, and that's what, because at first when I watched it I was like, why has he come back as a zombie? That's again looking quite Frankenstein.
I know.
I was like, I don't get that, but from rewatching it and things, and from the DVD commentaries, that the goo has caused him to evolve into this kind of monstrous figure. So I guess it's about, again, conflating the binary that yes, it would be destructive, it would be the end of mankind as we know it, but born out of that would be another evolution, would be another creation.
And then ultimately what happened was it destroyed them, right? Like, it destroyed the engineers, this goop, this stuff, is going to kill them.
Which is technology and what we're doing right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it comes full circle. And then it gets more, I mean, we should talk about, I guess, what is like the most memorable, famous kind of center set piece of this film, which is Elizabeth Shaw finding out she has an alien inside her, and she does a kind of self-abortion in that amazing... That scene is fucking good.
Yeah.
It's really good. Like, the whole execution of it, the tech, the way it looks, the practical effects, the monster... Noomi Rapaz's performance, like that scene is amazing.
Yeah, it's my favourite scene from the film when she's, on the one, it's that sense of dread that, because we know she can't have children, as the film so plainly tells us, and then
we want to create life. I can't create life. Yes, thank you.
Guess you can take your father's cross off now.
Why would I want to do that?
Because they made us.
And who made them?
Well, exactly. We'll never know. But here's what we do know. Is that there is nothing special about the creation of life, right? Anybody can do it. I mean, all you need is a dash of DNA and half a brain, right?
I can't create life. What does that say about me?
Cue one sad sex scene and then boom, pregnant.
Boom, pregnant. and it's 3 months along and all this, but that idea then that I think her and David have always been, there's a fondness there, but in that moment, David is like, no, you're gonna have it, whether you like it or not, and he won't let her see the monitor.
Yeah.
And there's that sense of dread then of what's going to happen, and this kind of sedative they give her, and then she has to kind of get to the medical capsule thing whilst close to giving birth. And so there's that the tension really ramps up there, and I think because the film for the most part is quite a slow film until we get to this point, it's very well paced.
It is
and then it is that, she gets there, and it made me laugh though, where she goes to talk, she types in about an abortion and it says, this is for a man, which made me think of, like, again, science and masculinity. So even things like crash test dummies, they've always been on male figures, and the kind of technology and technological developments have often been at the cost of women's bodies.
That's so true.
And health gaps and all those things that we find within healthcare systems, and again, for women, but also women of colour, etc., etc. And actually, at this point, then she's like, I can't even give myself a fucking abortion. I've got to do it through a male lens of this abdominal thing. But she does say it while she's doing it, which goes to your point about spelling these things out. But then, she gets in, and then we see it come out of her.
It's so good. It's so
not
good.
A chest burster, but but is effective in a different way.
Some sort of horrible... It almost looks a bit more like a face hugger, right? This kind of scuttly, like octopusy, kind of rat rodenty thing. That is like desperately trying to like jump at her as well, in the way that the face huggers do.
Yeah, and if part of the horror from Alien's always been the birthing scene.
Yes.
This in some ways is the opposite. It's like an anti-birthing scene, isn't it? Because it is an abortion. What it does so well is it gets it out of her, and obviously we're quite shocked by what it is, and then it's still in there with her, and she has to get out of there.
That she has to slide herself underneath it. It's horrible, but it's very satisfying. Like, there's something very satisfying about the whole sequence, and how, like, she gets it done. She staples herself up. She slides out of there. She closes the chamber. And you're just like, fuck yeah. It's a really good scene.
Yeah.
It's quite a triumphant scene, weirdly, isn't it? That she's just like, get this thing out of me and get to safety. You know?
And I think it sets up the ending really nicely. It's very clever in that respect, that we know you might cut, we see it at the beginning, we see it in the middle, and we're going to see it at the end. And so that works really nicely. There's also that
really
bit where, I mean, maybe it's a testament to women. Men are much more softer, shall we say? All of this happens, and then she has to carry on being, fighting the corporation, fighting the aliens.
Yeah,
puts a suit on. There's that bit where, like, one of the muscles sort of hits her with like a gun butt to the stomach. You're just like, it's
horrible.
Yeah,
and she's putting the really tight suit on, and she's like, she's zipping it up. And again, Noomi Rapaz does an amazing job, I think. Like, you really feel it, that body horror, that pain. She's brilliant. Let's finish by talking about the final act, when they come face to face with the engineers, right? And the engineers just fucking them all up. And who will ultimately be the space jockey, I believe, right? Yeah. How did you find that scene of them kind of coming face to face with their creator, I suppose?
It's everything is amped up by that point, doesn't it? It's the idea that, that Wayland's going to meet his maker, and obviously
Yeah.
we get the disappointment there. And I think we kind of no one's necessarily surprised by that. But I think it's then the jeopardy that comes with it's not just meeting them, but now we know why he was there. He was going to come out of sort of cryo sleep and send off the weaponry or whatever it is. And how do we stop that? How do we deal with this kind of godlike creature who's literally smashing everyone about? So, falls onto the captain then to smash the ship into which is a really satisfying.
It's good, that bit.
A way
it's
of
good, that bit.
But of course, then it means everyone's stuck on the planet as well. So I think that's a kind of fear of kind of being left on an island or a planet, remotely. So it's really good. I think again, the kind of pacing and tension of these things, like we now realize the thing that we've come for doesn't want us here, doesn't care for us, wants to destroy us. We're insignificant, and the tech we have, the knowledge we have, can't stop them in their tracks.
Yeah.
So the only way to destroy it is through is to destroy ourselves, essentially.
Yeah. And this is where we're ultimately starting to connect the dots, that this thing is the space jockey. He puts on the kind of exoskeleton suit, the helmet.
Which again is a bit disappointing, I think.
Disappointing.
But we have to reconcile with that, don't we? I mean, I do love talking about the ridiculous. When they fire the ship into the other ship and that stops them, and then it rolls like a penny. And
this is the part so many people had a problem with.
And literally everyone in the room was like, just run sideways.
Just dive to the side.
Dive to the side. It's...
Yeah. I know. And Charlize Theron gets squished, doesn't she? It's
Which also
so
is a real,
funny.
squid and octopus, I really hate. But the fear of being crushed by something, I have a real, it makes my chest feel tight. The idea of just being
yeah.
But again, it's kids squashing bugs with their thumbs, isn't it? There's that real kind of absolute brutality of that, of just being inconsequential by the tech they have, and that's going to destroy you.
It's very silly. I mean, this is the thing about this movie, is that there's stuff about it that is so good and so interesting and so well done, offset against some really silly decisions in the script and the story and what the characters do, and this is the funny thing about it. It's like a B movie but made on an A movie scale, right? That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, it's the aesthetics are almost like gallery looking, as you say.
Yeah.
Probably his most beautiful film. But just some of the choices of the deaths is just even the choice to bring back Fifield as this kind of big monstrous dude.
Yeah, that bit doesn't work for me, that bit.
And then he's kind of gone crazy, and he's using an axe. He's almost a kind of slasher type monster, like a Leatherface or something.
Yes.
And then they just quickly get rid of him. So, but yeah, it's. I think the ending, sets itself up quite nicely. You could watch it in and of itself and not watch Alien Covenant. And I think there's the idea of we don't want to go back home. Why would we want to go back home? And go somewhere else. I think that's quite a satisfying ending as well.
Yeah. And there's still that ambiguity of, okay, so Elizabeth and David are now on that ship. They're flying somewhere else. Eventually, we know that ship ends up crashed on LV-426 with a bunch of eggs in it, right? But we don't still quite have those connected dots yet at that point.
No, and I think actually we assume that's going to happen, isn't it? And then Alien Covenant perhaps is a kind of complicates that further.
It does, and I think the original plan was, we'll talk about Alien Covenant in a minute, I think the original plan was that was supposed to be a middle chapter. I think it was supposed to be a trilogy of prequels, but because Alien Covenant basically wasn't very well received and didn't make much money, we never got to see that third movie that I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine the third movie would bring us all the way up to the beginning of Alien, almost like the Nostromo finding the ship or something.
That's it. And Scott has said that Covenant 2, kind of what it was penciled as, has been written.
Wow.
And he was like, I'm ready to do it. But as you say, Covenant still made money, but not nearly as much. Prometheus was a big hit, despite it being
completely
divisive. Was hugely successful. And I think what it did do, perhaps with its ending, is that we do get the kind of the final Alien xenomorph is closest to what we see in the franchise. Well, of course, I want to know how that then gets to the xenomorph.
Absolutely, it's great. It leaves us on some great little kind of cliffhangers there, right? And I also think Covenant has a cool cliffhanger at the end of it as well, actually, despite the film's flaws. So there you go, Prometheus. It's a mixed bag. It has a kind of bad reputation. You know, when I was talking to friends the other day and I was like, I'm covering Prometheus, and everyone went, oh, there was a groan. You know, it's the film that people react in that way to it, which is really interesting. Yeah. And I think that was partly because of the anticipation, partly because of how good the marketing was. It was partly because people wanted it to be an alien film, and it wasn't. There are loads of reasons, I think, as to why it was disappointing. But there is also a hell of a lot to admire about it. And I actually think that in a post-Romulus world, it almost makes me admire Prometheus more, because Romulus annoyed me for almost all the opposite reasons, in that it was just playing it so safe as an alien horror film that was fan servicey, and Prometheus is almost doing the opposite to fan service.
Prometheus is not fan service, and we want to be served. It's like,
it's kind of like how when The Force Awakens came out, people were like, oh, at least the prequels were doing something different, you know? It's kind of like, at least the Phantom Menace was doing its own thing, you know? And it's almost that same parallel, isn't it? Of like, when you play it too safe, you actually go, oh no, maybe I would rather they take some bold swings.
I wonder if that will maybe bring a reappraisal of a Prometheus, now that we've got Romulus and these things that are so on the nose in terms of requels, that actually... Prometheus, it's taken some big swings, and there are a few misses with that. But actually, the stuff that lands is, I think it makes it one of the stronger films of the franchise. I stand by it. You know, I'm pro Prometheus.
I love that. Excellent. Well, I want to hear what you think of the follow-up, Alien Covenant. 5 years later, Alien Covenant, 2017. Now, really interesting, right? That. Even in this movie, the marketing was much more, this is an alien film, right? Like, Alien is in the title. They even make the title font and everything about it look like we are watching an alien movie. Very, very different stylistically to Prometheus, right? Let's get into it. James, give us a little plot rundown for Alien Covenant.
Okay. David is back, and this time he's doing the fingering. 10 years after Shaw and David leave LV-223 in search of the engineer's home planet, a terraforming colonization ship housing thousands of humans and android Walter is hit by an unforeseen neutrino burst, an act of God perhaps. This kills a number of the crew, including its captain. Dealing with the death of their leader and fixing the ship, they happen upon a transmission of a human voice and stumble across a new planet that could house human lives. The crew investigate the planet, where flora and fauna seem to be out to get them. After two neomorphs attack them, they result in more gruesome deaths. The group are saved by David, but is our advanced robot here to save our human compatriots? Or is this man-made monster set on becoming a god himself?
Lovely. Interesting. This film, what did you make of this in comparison to Prometheus? Did you go see this one at the cinema as well?
I didn't, and I think maybe that's why my feelings towards it are far more negative. I think I just caught it at home.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, compared to Prometheus, that seeing it on the big screen, really you feel that actually Alien Covenant, for all its flaws, is a smaller film.
Yes.
And so watching it at home isn't the end of the world. But I think because I had enjoyed Prometheus, I had high hopes for this because it was doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I was really disappointed by it. I think it felt cardboard cutout. I didn't like any of the characters.
No.
I think everything was rushed, you know, and I mean, going back to it, there's some cool set pieces, but ultimately for me, this is my least favourite Alien film apart from Alien vs Predator 2. That's where I put it.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Yeah,
but a lot of people like it. It's still divisive.
There's a part of me, I will be honest, and maybe it's to do with expectations for both. When I saw Prometheus, I came out feeling a bit disappointed in it.
Yep.
And maybe that was because of the build-up. And then when I went to see Alien Covenant, maybe I had lower expectations, but I came out of that going, oh, that was a very silly but fun horror movie, essentially. And I think that's more what it is, right? It is much more playing into being a monster movie than Prometheus with all of its grandiose ideas and philosophies and everything. This has a bit of that too, but it's leaning, the ratio is much more we're going to be an alien film more than we're going to be a David talking about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Film, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, a mixed bag. I watched it again this week, and again, as with Prometheus, maybe it's just Ridley Scott is such a good director. I found it perfectly watchable. I think Michael Fassbender is really fun. He is hamming it up to the max in this movie. And I kind of like that. Again, I think maybe that's what it is that this movie, for me, has going for it, is that it feels like it's taking itself less seriously than Prometheus. I don't know, though. I don't know if that's the case, but...
It's camper, isn't it, in that respect? It's more horror. It is camper.
It is camper, yeah.
But since it's trying to wrestle with the questions that it sets up in Prometheus, how it gets there through kind of David's story felt... I don't know. Yeah, it felt a bit like painting by number. I don't know. It's
it did a bit. It feels a bit too simplistic, almost, doesn't it? I think
which is what we criticize
complicated ideas and
yeah.
all that ambiguity. That now it's just like, oh, in the 10 years that's passed, David has a lab and he's been creating xenomorphs, essentially, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
and his hair's grown.
Yeah, why does his hair grow? I know, I had questions about that, and again. Some of the dumbest dialogue and some of the dumbest characters you've ever seen. I mean, I know this is one of those things. It's a bit like everyone talked about Prometheus and how dumb it is that Charlize Theron doesn't just run to the side. In this movie, everyone said, why did they land on that planet and take their helmets off and all fucking breathe in the pathogens and the, you know, even if the air is the right percentage of oxygen and nitrogen, if you were a scientist and astronaut, would you take your helmet off that quickly in this place, you know, and start breathing stuff in?
Or just send Walter. You know, if the big thing is that, you know, he's fine. He doesn't feel the heat or the cold and all these kind of things, and he's immune to it. Just send him with a little GoPro, go and have a look around.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, literally, if they'd not taken their helmets off, if they'd worn helmets, I don't think any of the events would have happened, right? Like, that we were aware of. Because they step on the little sort of things, whatever that you'd call them, the little buds, the little bulbs.
And they kind of puff up this...
and then it all goes into their ear holes and their eye sockets and up their nostrils and things.
Yeah, so they're called neomorphic egg sacs, apparently. And then they come into... when the sacs are damaged, they become motes, M-O-T-E-S, and then they become bloodbursters, and that's so
there you go.
That's my new area of academia now, is I'm gonna become like a biologist for these kinds.
Love it. Yes,
but it's all, you know, even the beginning is like, oh, we're on course for this planet that we know is safe. You know, there's this other planet, even though we've mapped the solar system, that we never saw. And I'm like,
silly.
How do you? Is David cloaking it, and they only find out about it because when they're fixing the spaceship, the song comes through because Shaw's been singing it. You know, the
John Denver's Country Roads. Yeah. Strange storytelling choices with how they get onto this planet.
Yeah.
You know. And again, it's very much trying to mirror Alien, isn't it, in a way, but a kind of much lesser version of it. But it's like they hear a distress signal, they debate back and forth. Do we follow the distress signal? Do we go and investigate, or do we just keep going as planned? But it's so much more bombastic, isn't it? You talked about this with, you know, the pacing of Alien and Aliens and Prometheus is that they are quite slow. Like we're about an hour in before the horror starts. This movie is like, even coming out of hypersleep, it's like people die and are burnt and there's a fire and we're mourning characters James Franco, who we haven't actually met, but we're mourning James Franco, and like it's very like boom, 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 boom straight away, isn't it, in this movie?
And they're all couples. That's the other thing. So everyone's a couple. So it's meant to be, you know, already there's a kind of relationship that people have with each other, and that's going to amp up the mourning and loss that we have here. Yes. And then they've got to make decisions, and it's like they won't go back into cryosleep because obviously we've had this accident. Yeah. But I was like, well, just stay awake then, read a book. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's funny, isn't it? The couple thing. I suppose it's because this particular ship is one that is kind of bringing colonists, right? It's like they are moving there to live there forever. So it's like everyone is moving there with their family or with their spouse or whatever.
That's it. And the embryos that we have as well to start new life.
But they use that as a very kind of shortcutty way to making quite bad decisions, don't they? So like the pilot, played by Danny McBride, goes back on a lot of his kind of what would be his kind of professional protocol because his wife is down on the planet's surface and, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, so Tennessee, who was inspired by Slim Pickens in Dr. Strangelove. So that's a Stanley Kubrick kind of reference there, which is like, for me, maybe the most interesting thing about him. But I think for me, and I think maybe Prometheus is different, and the other film is like that again, that the emotions it wants you to grapple with, like, I'm going to save my wife, or my partner has died, and it's just, it's a bit unearned. It feels more artificial compared to some of the other films. And even again, the thing of, they won't make me captain because I have faith.
Yeah, what did you make of that? I was quite confused by Billy Crudup's character. Like, at the beginning, you think, okay, is he going to be a bit of a mad... Is he going to be a bit weird? Is he going to be a bit of a fundamentalist or an evangelical? Or is there going to be something... Is that going to come to something, the fact that he is religious as well as scientific, and that's going to come to a clash in some way?
It doesn't.
But it doesn't, does it? It ultimately comes to absolutely nothing, all of that. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I do like about it in that respect is that it's not afraid to, like, just... kill people off very quickly, and so he loses.
Well, it's back to being almost a slasher movie, this, isn't it?
Yeah, so he has to watch his wife die, or see the thing blow up, and then, what saves you if you don't have faith, or if you do have faith, or on a planet where faith doesn't exist, and that's, I guess that's one side of it, isn't it? Is that is ultimately David's kind of arc.
Yeah,
that's he is the new religion, and he effectively does what was going to happen in Prometheus, right? He lands on this planet, which is, and I think that's why the bold white alien dudes are back, because this is their home planet.
This is actually their planet.
Their home planet, and they've evolved, so they look slightly different from when we first see them in Prometheus. And that's why they're rejoicing. Because at first I was like, I don't get how can they control the spaceship? And then I rewatching it, realised that it's their spaceship. So they're all kind of in religious awe of this thing that's returned, which again has religious connotations, and he drops all the vessels or the vases, and that destroys them all. But new life is born out of that, isn't it? So,
but that's another thing that kind of confused me. Like, if they killed that many people with the vases, with the goo, wouldn't this planet be crawling with xenomorphs or some form of xenomorphs? Like, or is it just that it kills them all, they all dissolve, and then we're just left with the kind of egg sacs? I don't like.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's maybe, again, it's like the beginning of Prometheus where the guy drinks the goo, and that's dissolved them to
dissolves them. Because I thought some of them were going to be, some of them might have been chest bursted, some of them might have been, turned into things. Or we don't really see that. I suppose 10 years has passed, but I would have thought, oh God, this could have ended up being a planet completely inhabited by aliens, I would have thought. But anyway, I don't know.
If you think too hard, you just tie yourself in knots, doesn't it?
I know.
Because then, those spores have gone into those humans, and that's where we get those different kind of bursty aliens.
Yes.
But then also he's testing on bits of shore that create the kind of, which is almost like a hark back to Alien Resurrection, the kind of previous iterations of the xenomorph that have failed, essentially. And then he needs a full body to get to the evolution, which also go back to Darwinism. He's like going through selective breeding.
He is.
So they're talking about, well, this is challenges Darwinism, but I'm like, actually, it doesn't. It reinforces Darwinism, just in a different manner.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I don't want to go through this beat by beat. I don't think, we need to spend as much time on this movie as we did Prometheus, really. We've said the characters are a little, it's not necessarily a new thing for this franchise, but the characters are a little cardboard cutout, aren't they, essentially?
Yeah.
You got some kind of good actors. You've got a few familiar faces in here. But again, for me, Fassbender is the most interesting thing in this movie, as two different characters this time, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about the ensemble cast for Prometheus. Like, they're very recognisable actors. It's quite a lot of A-listers there.
Yeah.
This cast it feels a little bit more made for TV, like even Danny McBride, who isn't really, he's not the comic relief in it, but his serious acting chops don't really deliver it. When he finds out his wife dies and he just goes and stands by a wall and looks very kind of pensive.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, Billy Crudup maybe is the biggest name in terms of film stars. You've got Catherine Waterston, who is she's well known for a few different things, but they're all fine, I think. But yeah, you're right. It hasn't got that kind of like heft a Charlize Theron and an Idris Elba and all the other people we got.
Yeah, and even our sort of main protagonist. I mean, I forget their names. That's that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So Daniels, so she's meant to be our strong female character, but again, that never really comes across in a way that feels kind of real to the story world.
I know.
And again, you don't have to have the same kind of archetypal woman in all the films, but she's almost like an artifact that you don't really know much about, apart from that, her partner died in the fire and that she's kind of mourning the loss of him. And but it's like, it's almost used as a way to then reveal that David is David at the end. It's like they've thought about the ending first and maybe worked backwards.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think of Walter, this new android that Fassbender plays?
I mean, it's a terrible accent, isn't it? It's so like,
it's not great.
I feel like that's if I was going to do an American accent, that's what it would sound like. But again, the role of the doppelganger, is useful here. But really, he's not used particularly effectively. It's a kind of mirroring of the first film, but he puts out the fire and stuff like that, and then he meets David, and then that's that kind of, they have a fight scene.
Yeah, they do have really fun, and a very homoerotic scene as well.
Yeah, there's some blowing and fingering, and
yeah. So they land on that planet. Shit starts going down immediately because these characters are such idiots that they don't put on any helmets, and so they start breathing in all of this goop.
Yeah.
And people start getting, and again, we've got some, like, just on a very kind of superficial horror movie, body horror level, we get some good gruey horror as things like burst out of people's spines and people are mutating and creatures are coming out, and we get these kind of, it's almost a xenomorph looking thing, right? The things that is chasing them around.
Yeah.
They're kind of much, much smaller and they're a bit scrappier and they're not as strong, but they look almost a bit more xenomorph shaped, don't they? These things that are attacking.
So these are called neophytes, and then they move into, and then they evolve into neomorphs.
Okay.
But I think, the backburst is a particularly cool scene.
It's cool.
But one of the things, again, it's very CGI. I think that's the other thing.
That is the other thing about
so
this.
Slick.
Yes.
And I think the rest of the films have always felt more tangible, which has been part of the fear. And I was listening back to your episode on Alien, and you talk about the fact that the xenomorph is often not really hunting prey. It's kind of just on the ship, and it's
hiding in events,
which is part of the fear, isn't it? That you might accidentally disrupt this thing and we can't get rid of it. But in this, there's that kind of, the planet is hostile. The alien beings that come out are immediately hostile, almost kind of like angry monkey kind of vibes, or, or like a feral cat. And again, it's like hyper frenetic.
It's almost a bit like we're in a sort of Jurassic Park film or something. Like we're sort of running through long fields, and this little scrappy monster is kind of darting about, and they're
like
trying to shoot it and stuff.
Or for me, like a Resident Evil movie, and obviously MVP was done by the lesser Paul Anderson.
Absolutely.
And for me, when I was watching this, I was like, it really feels to me like one of the Resident Evil films in that respect.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. And I think that's true. The heft, the weight of the xenomorph is lost in these little proto-xenomorph things, whatever they're called.
The battle's quite cool when, again, in the grass, and we see, it takes someone's jaw out. That there's some quite good body horror there that makes them feel kind of very hard to kill.
Absolutely.
And then David, he arrives.
David saves them. He's wearing a hood, and then it's revealed to be David. He's got long hair for some reason.
Looks like he goes surfing, doesn't he? And,
he does. Yeah, he's been really enjoying himself for 10 years, hasn't he? Just in his pad, like building things, experimenting, and he has gone full villain in this movie, right?
Yeah.
He is now he is the mad scientist at this point, right? He has become Frankenstein, Reanimator, all the other kind of classics, the Dr. Phibes. You mentioned, Vincent Price. There's a bit of like, he's like a William Castle character almost in this film,
very
isn't
much
he?
So. But I mean, if we're gonna try and give credit to the film, is that he starts off in many ways as Frankenstein's monster. He is trying to work out who he is, kills his own creator, but he has come full circle and now he's Victor, you know? And so I think that is an interesting dynamic where if you put the two films next to each other and treat it as one narrative, that actually, if we're talking about the themes from the first film, that is an interesting thing. Like, is that something that is innate in all of us, that we all want to kill our dads and become gods? I mean, Freud and Jung would probably argue that is the case. But so I think that is an interesting dynamic. And of course, he is also reconciling with himself in the guise of Walter, and that, you know, Walter is a different version of that then has to, you know, and there, you know, one thing I do like is that David quotes something, doesn't he? And he says it's Byron or something like that. And he gets it wrong. So that is the idea that you are human, that you are fallible, you're not a god, you're not, you know, all seeing. And that's what kind of breaks the myth that he's creating for himself in many ways.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the thing about David, right? He is the most human of all the kind of androids we've ever seen in this franchise, right? You know, and that's what makes him dangerous in a lot of ways, and potentially unstable or potentially unpredictable, and all these other things that he is in this movie.
That, you know, for the long, it's that one part of the, you know, androids are scary because they're emotionless, that they're kind of hyper rational. But actually, I do like the scene where our neomorphs in their kind of final stage, or deacons they call them, with the pointy heads.
The ones that kind of stand upright, the big tall. So they were actually inspired, I think, by parts of the original film. They were designs, right,
like a beluga xenomorph kind of thing, that they never used. But when the captain kills the first one, and you know when David's blowing on its nose and it's like a horse. But I think the bit where the captain kills it, because that is a good scene where you see the woman's head just floating in the water.
It's good.
That's probably my favourite shot of the movie. That he shows real pain and distress, doesn't he? That
he does.
This is the thing that he has created. He's essentially its father.
Yes.
And that something else has killed it, and he shows, you know, it's the most emotion we kind of see from him, don't we? That someone else has killed, you know, his proverbial son.
So our proverbial fathers created the goop, and then our proverbial son has enhanced them and turned them into what will eventually become xenomorphs, I guess, because he has created even the eggs, like the classic xenomorph eggs are introduced in this movie, right?
Yeah, so it's my understanding, because I was like, well, is this not, where's the alien queen in all of this?
And I think this comes down to some behind-the-scenes stuff, right? I believe that Ridley Scott never liked the idea of the queen. That was a James Cameron invention.
Right.
And I think Ridley Scott has been slightly retconning the fact that there's a queen.
So in the Alien Covenant Blu-ray, there's scenes where David is mixing various parts of the neomorphs, possibly with Shaw's eggs.
Right.
And that, using the black goo, and that is what creates the xenomorph eggs.
Yes. And in a way that makes more sense to Alien, because on LV-426, and there's all those eggs in that chamber, there's no queen there, right? There's no queen there that's laid all those eggs, you know.
Yeah. And the queen, you know, in Alien vs Predator is the kind of thing that they're almost like harnessing, aren't they? That they're manufacturing them. And I think, you know, Prometheus and Alien Covenant are certainly saying that AVP is not canon, I would argue, you know, even by changing the Wayland founder.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that those scenes where you realise what David's done to Shaw's body,
grim,
that is some dark stuff.
I know. This is the thing. It plays much more into the horror, this, and goes full camp villain. I mean, the flute scene is hilarious. Again, it's like, I don't know what they thought they were going for there, other than extremely camp homoerotic comedy, almost, you know.
Hold it like so. Nice and easy. Now compress your lips to create your embouchure. Enough for the tip of your little finger. And blow into the hole gently. Like so. Watch me. I'll do the fingering.
And Scott's not known for his comedies. He's quite a serious dude, but that I kind of forgot that is like a centerpiece. I don't know. It's just mad.
I mean, they actually kiss at one point later in the film, don't they?
Yeah.
As well, so that is very much there.
But also, David at one point we think has killed Walter in quite a shocking scene where he kind of pulls the thing out of him.
It's really shocking. Yeah,
which happens very fast. But even some of the choices where the captain has now got he gets the chest burst to go into, his face are going to him. And again, that's really quick, isn't it? In the original film, it's quite a lengthy period, and that makes it more surprising. But obviously, we're a knowing audience, so we're expecting, because now we're putting all the jigsaw pieces together. It happens too quickly, I think, for me. But then we get the chest burster scene, and the music playing there, the score is ridiculous because it's meant to be a horror. It's really kind of shadows and David's face, and he's the real monster. But the music is so kind of melancholic and beautiful that he's meeting his child, and then David puts his arms up, and then the xenomorph kind of copies him, and it's a CGI, and it's just so
very strange. It's very strange.
I think that's the one moment I told the movie to fuck off. I was like,
fair enough. Fair enough. I know. It's very silly, and
it's almost like Starship Troopers, then, isn't it? Like they're all kind of like shooty, and
exactly. I think that's right. Then it does just evolve into shooting at CGI aliens, doesn't it? And you've got the acid blood bursting out and things, and again, like surface level, some fun set pieces. There's some fun stuff. It's a bit weightless, and it's a bit thin, I guess, compared to some of the best movies in this franchise.
Yeah, and I think the alien again moves very fast, doesn't it? So even the battles feel clunky.
A bit blink and you miss them almost.
Yeah. Again, for me, feels right. Resident Evil. I mean, the thing that again I really didn't like was the POV shots from the xenomorph.
Oh yeah, I did not.
Where you're looking through its eyes.
Need that.
Oh, mate, no one needs that. Yeah, that's it. It's like, and it doesn't fit with the rest of the franchise. It doesn't really give us much. I mean, and when it's breaking the cameras, isn't it? Which made me feel like, clever girl.
Yeah, very clever. Exactly. It feels a bit Jurassic Park, doesn't it? It's strange. Yeah. It's when you think back to what Ridley did with the xenomorph in the first film, and it kind of hid in the shadows, and the set design was so clever. All of that Giga sort of imagery where you were looking at pipes and dripping rooms, and you couldn't almost tell what was the alien and what wasn't, and all of that brilliant stuff.
I think if someone said to you that this was an alien film, but you didn't know it was Ridley Scott, I don't think you would realize. You wouldn't think he had made it. It's like someone that has paid lip service or doesn't know the franchise that well. That's the thing that I think is perhaps most shocking, this is a Ridley Scott film.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really interesting. And it came out 5 years after Prometheus, so it's not like it was rushed out, like it was released a year later or something.
No. I mean, maybe, he talked about the fact that Covenant 2 had been written, that maybe this was just a stepping stone to get to something.
A film. Yeah, I think there is an element of that. There absolutely is an element of that. And we end up back on the ship. And again, it's pretty obvious, but we know that when Walter, quote unquote, gets back on the ship and they've all got to safety, obviously that's not Walter, that is David. He's come to destroy them all, essentially. And it ends with them all going back into hypersleep, and David kind of planting a couple of alien embryos, I guess, on the ship, right? While everyone's sleeping.
Yeah, so that there's so the dude that has his face, but again, I can't remember his name. This is sort of how, cardboard cutout they are. He has a chest burst to come out of him. So then there's another xenomorph on the ship.
Yeah.
And then they fight that. And then there's the bit where they blow the truck out of it, and then even when she pops up at the end and smiles, I'm like Ripley would never smile in that situation. It's so corny.
Definitely.
And there's the scene where the couple again are having sex in the shower.
That is, I mean, again, we're in a slasher B movie, aren't we? That's the thing. It's so funny.
And it's like, part of the appeal, I think, of the original films was the sexual iconography was horrifying in a way that was Giga's imagery and confusing and biological but mechanic.
Yes.
And this was so on the nose of like they're having sex, but the thing that goes through looks like a penis, and then the thing that I was just like, it's again slasher painting by numbers. So, but I think actually, David giving, who is an android who also is not meant to procreate, gives birth to these embryos.
Yes.
It's,
out of
for
his
me,
mouth.
It's the best part of the film, I think. And the song that plays at the end, Valhalla.
Yes.
It's about the god. But again, that's right. The idea the gods are kind of fallible and we can destroy them. So
again, it's like toying with some interesting themes throughout. And I do think David is an interesting character.
Yeah.
Had this been a complete trilogy of David's journey almost, which I imagine it would have been, maybe we'd have thought differently by the time we got to the end of the third part. But this movie, just on its own as a film, doesn't completely work, apart from as a very kind of simple, bare bones, silly slasher monster movie. But one that ends on a kind of interesting note. Again, I think that cliffhanger was actually really cool, and I would like to have seen what happened next.
Yeah, it sets itself up beautifully for the next film.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think maybe that they'd got that idea, and maybe because Prometheus did so well that they always had a trilogy in mind.
Yeah.
So and that I say Covenant 2 has been written apparently, but they sort of had to sort of work their way backwards to get there in a way that just, as we say, feels rushed and
didn't quite work.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I wonder what happened because we've since had Alien Romulus, which was really successful. Alien Earth was also, I think, pretty successful.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to know. I reckon Disney will continue making more Alien stuff. Whether or not we'll ever go back to this timeline, to this story, I don't know.
Yeah, and whether Scott's involved in the same way. I think he was an executive.
I think at this point now he's 88. I'll be surprised, right?
Yeah, it's but the films do make money. Prometheus was the highest grossing IMAX horror film of all time.
Yeah.
Only beaten by Romulus. So I think part of it is we go to these films sometimes for the spectacle.
We do. We absolutely do.
Romulus, the zero gravity acid. I'm here for that. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people weren't. I'm like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all of these films, maybe apart from AVP2, all of them have something about them, right? Whether you hate Alien Resurrection, there's stuff about it that is kind of interesting and weird and camp. And Alien 3, I think, is kind of a mess, but the story and the idea and the themes are really interesting, I think, and dark.
Yeah.
And Prometheus is packed with ideas. Alien Covenant has some promise and good stuff about it. Like, all of them have things about them that are really interesting. And they have spectacle, and they have body horror, and they have the monsters that we all love, and the Giga iconography. But all of them also have stuff about them that make them really fucking frustrating as well. It's a real mixed bag, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. And I think the only other thing that comes to mind that's been really well received was the video game Alien Isolation.
Yes.
And that was because that's almost like a walking sim in many ways. It's hiding and survival. So it plays into what scared us in the first film, but doing it through a kind of video game, kind of language. So I think if we have to go into the franchise, kind of yielding that we're going to be disappointed in some way, shape, or form, isn't it?
I think so.
Because it's incoherent.
I think we have to go in knowing that it's never going to be Alien or Aliens, right? And accept that, and then just take what we're given. Yeah,
that's it.
But I think I wanted it, like, the fact that we've still never gone back to the format of the first movie, which is just one alien in a single location with a group of characters, Like, Alien Romulus teased that, but then ultimately it wasn't really that, in the end. And we've never gone back to that. They always have to go big, and I would love it to be just slightly smaller, maybe.
Yeah, and that is... I think generally, you look at stuff around kind of sequel studies and horror studies, there is a kind of consensus that, to make a sequel, you do the bits of the film that landed and you make them bigger.
Yes, exactly.
And, in many ways, Prometheus is epic. Actually, the first 4 films are all kind of nighttime films. This is the one that we get in daytime. And so there's a kind of, a scale and grandeur to it. And then obviously, Covenant kind of brings that back. But
actually, even Covenant, we are in big outdoor spaces and giant temples, and it still has that feel.
Yeah, and nature is the first one we have real kind of nature. So there's always, but again, I guess that's kind of things like, what are we going to do with the next one? It's aliens on ice.
Exactly.
We've done aliens in space, so we'll do the next one. So but it's what it did so well in the first film is that it set up so many kind of tidbits and things you could explore as a sci-fi film. These are expansive universes. And that's what each person is trying to do, maybe. As we say, it gives us answers. It raises more questions. And through that, we can find things that we like, and there's things that frustrate the hell out of us.
Well, this is it. And I think, it's been really interesting to talk about these two movies in the context of this particular season, because, it's come so far by this point. Alien was so Lovecraftian, it was so unknowable. Nothing was explained about this creature, about where it's from, about how it works, about what was going to happen next. And now we are very much in the domain of man-made monsters, right? Like, it's almost confirmed to us really at this point that these are essentially biological weapons that were created, right? And for some people, I think that really ruins the magic of what these films are.
Yeah, but again, if horror can make comments in the moment and of the future, the idea that maybe man-made monster, i.e. David, then created kind of man-made or android-made xenomorphs, they made the perfect killing machine.
Yeah.
That feels very pertinent to what's going on at the moment in the world around us, right? You look at the military complex and
it's essentially a biological weapon, right? I mean, that's what it is. It's we've covered a lot of movies about that too. We've covered Threads, we've covered Terminator, we've covered movies about weapons wiping humanity out, essentially.
Yeah, it's the again, technology. We can use it to create and save, or we can use it to just destroy and destruction, and that's ultimately what a lot of the films of Prometheus and Alien Covenant are, the themes there.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I love it. Well, James, we should wrap things up there. I want to finish by asking you, what is your favourite movie in the Alien series? Did you say it was Aliens, the James Cameron?
So I would say Aliens, then Alien, then Prometheus. I'm putting Prometheus third.
Yeah.
I like Alien Resurrection. I've come back to that quite a few times. I think it's fun. I think it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
Some great performances. Alien 3, Alien vs. Predator, Alien Covenant, Alien vs. Predator 2. That's mine.
What about Romulus? Where would Romulus go?
Oh, where's Romulus go? I think it's below Alien 3, I'd say. Yeah. I really enjoyed it the first time, and then the second time I just didn't like it. I just think it didn't land. I think once the fan service...
the fan service is too much. I agree.
It started strong. It was a lovely idea. I liked a younger cast and all those things.
Do you know what? I've been really intrigued. I've been quite looking forward to revisiting Prometheus and Alien Covenant, even though they're flawed. I think there's more to rewatch and engage with, whereas actually Alien Romulus, I felt no need to rewatch it, No. And I think that says something.
And I felt like that when I saw it at the film. I was like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
That was some really cool things.
Yeah.
Some really cool set pieces.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to revisit it.
Exactly. Yeah. I would go, I think, Alien first, then Aliens, and then a big old gap, of course. And then I would go probably Alien Resurrection. I think that's my third favourite. Yeah. Then Alien 3, then Prometheus, then Covenant, then Romulus, and then the two AVPs at the very bottom, I think.
Have you seen the TV series?
Only halfway through it, actually.
Yeah, I've only watched a couple.
It's quite good, although it didn't grab me enough to actually finish it. I keep thinking at some point I'll go back to it, but I haven't yet. So, that's interesting, isn't it?
That's the thing with fans now, isn't it? I think we're a bit like, oh yeah, okay, there's another thing coming out. And as you say, because Disney owns it now,
That's it. It's going to become Marvel, basically, because Disney owns it.
The Xenomorph is now a Disney queen, and we can...
I love that. Amazing. Well, James, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. Before you go, just remind people if people want to come and find you or find any of your work or your writing, where can they find you?
So I am on Instagram. I am on Blue Sky. I can never remember any of my handles. If you just type in James Rendell, there'll be pictures of me. I'm on LETTERBOXD. You can find my academic work on my stuff. Webpage. So I publish a lot on horror audiences. I've got a new book coming out, a co-edited book with the wonderful Kate Egan, that's looking at empirical research into horror audiences and fans. So that'll be coming out shortly.
Amazing.
But yeah, I'm on the Facebook page for EOH. But yeah, always happy to chat extensively about the genre that we love so much.
And stick up for Prometheus to all those haters.
And stick up for Prometheus. Come and join me. Don't take yourself so seriously. Yeah. We can all run sideways. We get it.
Amazing. James, thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. It's been such a blast.
And that's it for this week. Thank you all so much for listening. One more time, a massive thank you to the brilliant James Rendell. Loved discussing those two stupid little movies. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of Prometheus and Alien Covenant? You can email me, evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find Evolution of Horror on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find me, Mike Muncer, on Instagram and Blue Sky. If you want to get ad-free versions of this podcast, you can sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/evolutionofhorror. You'll also get bonus content there every single week. Earlier this week, we dropped a Patreon exclusive where we reveal to patrons what the next season of EOH is going to be, and we discuss some of the movies, and patrons themselves can make suggestions and help me program the next season. So if you want to check that out, as well as a whole bunch of other bonus content, patreon.com/evolutionofhorror. This podcast is part of the EOH network. You can also listen to our 2 weekly sister podcasts, Hammer Time, a Hammer Horror podcast, and Carry On Up the podcast. You can find those wherever you get your podcasts. So, on to next week then. We've got a really fun double bill next week of deadly AI children's toys. Rob Watts is going to be joining me to discuss Child's Play. That's the 2019 Child's Play with Mark Hamill. And, of course, Blumhouse's Megan from 2022. Join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.